And go. Okay. Good morning.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Zac Grant, Executive Director of the Pleasanton Downtown Association. Zac joined the PDA back in May and will discuss the latest happenings in downtown and his plans for future events and programs. So I know downtown is on everybody's mind all the time because it's such a jewel for Pleasanton. So Zac, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
I'd like to thank all of you for inviting me, and Steve, thanks for thinking of me and helping us to get the word out about what's happening downtown. And as I was visiting with Steve about what he'd like the shape of this to be and how long and what to cover and so on, really wanted to convey to him and to all of you that I learn more today than you will if I do this correctly. And so help me to do that by thinking about downtown and your experience and asking questions and sharing with me what you already know about downtown, which is greatly, vastly more than I know about downtown. I just crossed my 100 days in Pleasanton threshold last week. And so it's a bit preposterous for me to be telling any of you who are engaged in the city the way that you are what ought to be going on downtown. And to tell you the truth, part of what I'm going to tell you is the list of things I've been instructed to do, not really what my plans are for downtown. I'm not talking to you from the bat cave with secret maniacal plans about what to do downtown, just certainly trying to listen to everyone, synthesize what I can understand about downtown, make the smartest moves that we can make together. And I'll begin with this. The first impression that I got in this new position came on our board meeting on May 10th. I had moved to Pleasanton on May 9th, and fortunately there was a board meeting the next morning. So I left the Marriott Courtyard on Hop Yard down for our first in-person meeting that we were having at the cellar door, and that was the morning when things kind of erupted as far as retailers being upset about Main Street, looking at the prospect of Main Street being closed all summer. And we had a very emotional, good emotional, but emotional discussion and presentation from Jamie at the bridal store about what was going to happen. And our 1 hour meeting was consumed entirely just by her initial presentation, and then realizing that no one around the room knew each other. And I was surprised because she said she'd worked downtown for 17 years and that we all had to introduce each other to one another. So the impression that I got was that my first job is for us to reacquaint with ourselves with each other and reestablish our shared sense of purpose and thereby to reignite the brand of downtown. I think we all have an impression of downtown that lives in our minds and our hearts that we would like to see. We'd like to form a more perfect downtown, but it's far from perfect. And the first job that we have is to understand when we're really arguing with each other and when we're just going through the motions of bickering with each other over old arguments that have been either long settled or don't have much impact compared to the good things we could do together if we take a breath and get to know each other. So that my overarching objective in most everything that I've done since I've been here is just to try to get to know the people and understand the issues and determine whether there's really any stasis there or not, or if this is something that we can roll up all of our different projects and move generally forward together. I've also learned that that isn't possible, that no matter what direction, we could take any direction. It's kind of like being the weatherman. I can take any direction and I'll be right a substantial percentage of the time, and I'll upset an important but minority group that will not forget about it for a while until I rotate it around and I rain on their picnic. So it's just a very fun and logical and human exercise. And I think the more that we continue to have good people like are on the call today, all pulling together for downtown, I don't see how we can lose. We can fumble and we can push each other sideways in ways that aren't productive. But I do think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit for us to take advantage of. And so those are the things I'd like to update you on. Steve, if it makes sense, I'll just, rather than talk, in a cerebral academic way, I think I'd like to just move through some of the projects that we're working on. I'll bullet those out and then as quickly as I can, and then we can maybe get to a discussion of what everybody would like to visit about.
Sounds good. Thank you.
We've all been through quite a bit the past 20 months, as an understatement, but it obviously, and has been said many times in different contexts, it presents us with enormous challenges and great opportunities. And so for us downtown, I'm looking at trying to learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can, and then distill out what has always been constant about downtown, the best of that, and the best of what we've learned by the experiences that we've had through the pandemic, and then to distill out from that the best path going forward. So here are the programs that I think are the most important on my agenda right now. First, the outdoor dining has been extended through the end of the year. When it was originally put together over a year ago, the idea was that by Labor Day of 2021, we would surely be ready to let that go. Well, obviously, Delta variant and other things meant that the council wisely extended the outdoor dining program. It's called parklets or pop-ups, or different language used for it. I just talk about it as the outdoor dining program. That's been extended under the temporary emergency order through the end of the year. We have been charged by the staff, city staff, been charged by the council, and PDA and others that are interested have been invited to join in a process to look at converting what we've learned in the temporary program into something potentially permanent. And the issue, and I think not just potentially, I think there's a great deal of momentum. I would be shocked if we do anything other than something with permanent outdoor table service downtown in some form. It will, however, have to be improved, enhanced along the lines of aesthetics, safety. There are some equity issues. There are going to be some surprises when some of these folks who've got a temporary parklet learn that there's a manhole underneath the flooring that they built, and they're not going to be allowed to have one. So there are all kinds of devil in the details kind of things, but we need to work on, that's a top priority between now and the end of the year. Before we lose the temporary program, we need to know, generally speaking, what will be the replacement program, even if there's an open season between January and May or whenever, as soon as they can be converted to more permanent structures. I think if we let go of the temporary program before we know what the permanent program is, generally speaking, going to be, there's a chance it'll be hard to continue. And so I think that it's an important issue, and it's something that really has helped the restaurants and has made downtown vibrant. Secondly, related but distinct is the question of what to do with weekend Main Street closures. PDA has, because of its 2/3 of our budget has depended historically on downtown street events, primarily brew crawls, which I'm going to work with the board on trimming the number of those down from 7 or 8 to 3 or so, and finding other ways to raise money than to sell people a wristband so they can get hammered on Main Street. But the point being that that's another point that I can jump to, is that another important point is reprogramming our revenue generating activities at PDA so that they're more diverse and robust, and that they contribute to promoting downtown in more intelligent and creative ways. I mean, everything that's been done has been intelligent and creative. It's just that over time we've accumulated the programs that were making us the most money, and they all tended to be a walk down Main Street to have a wine or a beer somewhere. And those are not real edifying programs to me. And I'd like to move us a little bit in a different direction. But back to the question of Weekends on Main. Weekends on Main is really a blank canvas for all kinds of incredible improvements in the programming downtown. When we have that opportunity to have the entire street closed, we were just out of resources this year to do anything. The only program that we've really put on programming on the street was a BMX bicycle show the other day that was really well received. And that was underwritten by the Superfly Wheels retailer and with some help from PDA. But when we've got resources and time to plan for future, I think the Weekends on Main is a really important program. I'd like to create either a rotating series it could be one, but it could more likely a rotating series of events that would be a bookend to the farmers market, which is down in Angela, and up on either St. Mary or some other appropriate place in the north end of Maine, have a companion activity that was driving foot traffic and vibrancy the way the farmers market does down on the other end of Maine. Something like an Etsy show or a bridal fair, a job fair, a science fair, bicycle show. You know, there are a million things. There are a couple I don't want to mention because they're easy to steal and they'll be good ideas. But we can put programming on the other end of Maine that will also be a good revenue generating program for PDA, but bring a lot of value to the merchants up there and to the residents up there and to the visitors downtown. And then the next item on my list is bringing back concerts in the park. We're doing that this Sunday. And we learned this year that when Main Street is closed on a Friday night in the summer, it's not a good idea to also put the kind of pressure on First Street that concerts in the park would generate. So instead of doing that this summer, we had a lot of discussions and different ways of approaching it, but we came on the idea of let's do a shorter season of concerts. We'll do it in the fall after the weekends on Main have sunsetted on Labor Day. There's an exact 6-week space between the end of Labor Day and the beginning of the county fair this year. So it's a good place for us to test a 6-week series. And because sunset times are much earlier in the fall, it really starts going off a cliff. Sunset this weekend is going to be around 7:30. By the end of the 6 weeks, it'll be 6:25. So we can't start the concerts at 7 p.m. as we used to. So we can't do them on Friday. If we did, we'd be starting in the middle of a lot of folks' workday. So we're going to do those on Sunday afternoons from 4 to 6 for 6 weeks. We're going to start with our most popular band that I've been told over time, the Public Eye, which plays all different sorts of music and is really high quality band. And we're going to see how we do. And we'll take this information from this fall. And it may be that if Weekends on Main continues in its present form or something similar to its present form, that concerts could live on Sunday afternoons in the fall, and we would do music on Main during the summer. That's another idea. Nothing that's for 2022 is set in stone as yet. Next on my list is creating some 21st century retail promotion. We're struggling with retail. We'd be struggling even if there weren't COVID. Amazon and other factors affect retail. It's a tough business in good times. It's a really challenging business right now. And I've started a retail working group that has met once, and we're going to come up with, we're renewing some of the things that are tried and true, like Small Business Saturday and other programs, but we're looking for some new ideas and any ideas that you see elsewhere in other cities that look like good ways of doing promotions. We're open to those. Let's see, I'll come to the end of my list here shortly. If I could read my own writing. Oh, I think it's a very important objective for me. And going back to where I started about bringing people together, I think there's a feeling that all that matters to PDA is first floor Main, and that isn't true. I'm not sure of the GDP numbers, but I would not be shocked to find that the activity on second floor Main eclipses first floor Main by an order of magnitude. And I wouldn't be further surprised to find that the amount of business that's done off Main, but in the historic district, I know of one business that's a $350 million business downtown that none of you probably know who they are. I stumbled across them myself. Now, I don't think we're doing $350 million worth of restaurant business downtown, but I'm not sure, maybe we are. But I think it's important for me to remember that this is an entire district and everyone here is paying in an assessment, and everyone who's working down here deserves to be on the agenda at PDA. And so I'm working on a program that I've signed an NDA on, and that we may be able to announce within a month or so, to try to help all the businesses upstairs and off Main to really get a member service benefit out of their involvement with PDA. So with that with that bit of intrigue, that's my list that I'm working on right now. There are obviously the kitchen issues of, we have an election coming. We have to report to the council and make sure that we renew our city contract there. We need to keep our business license and the doors open, and I'm the only full-time employee. So that's a fairly long list, and I need all of your help. And particularly if you happen to be at the concerts this weekend and you see me failing, come up and pitch in and empty one of the trash cans. So I bet we're going to need help getting through this first weekend of concerts until we relearn how to do them. And I being from out of town and never having attended one of these concerts, can use any help or advice that any of you have, or whether it's just friendly advice all the way up to wanting to come and sit at the table and volunteer with me this Sunday from 2 to 4. So thank you.
Thank you, Zach, for that overview. I know you've had some minor challenges since you've arrived. Did you get the air conditioning working?
That's so funny. The air conditioner went off Friday afternoon. And I've been working this weekend because concerts are next weekend. It was 94 degrees in here every day for all weekend. And my landlady did not appreciate the scent of my arrival when I returned home in the evening. So but the good news is the city is our landlord, and they have amazing people and resources, and they fixed the air conditioner. I couldn't be happier.
Wonderful. It looks like Lori has a question or comment. So Lori, it's all yours.
I just have friendly heads up for the concert series on Sunday.
Yes.
Check the timing for the irrigation system. Make sure your sprinklers are going to come on.
Good point. You see, these are the kinds of things that the freshman needs to know before he goes down that hallway. Love it.
Pete, see your hand up there.
Okay, so on the agenda last night was recommendation.
Sorry, go ahead. My fault.
Last night, the city council had an agenda item saying, with the staff recommending 100% retail. And then at some point it got pulled off the agenda. What happened with that? I mean, I know it wasn't discussed, right?
No, Kathy can speak to that better than I can, but I just ran out of time and had to push it 2 weeks, I think is what happened.
Kathy?
That's correct. And I actually, at the beginning of the meeting, asked to rearrange the agenda order so that, well, knowing that the police item was probably going to take a long time, which it did. And the third agenda item was the financing plan for the PFAS treatment and well rehabilitation. And I thought it was critical that we get that done last night and not delay another 2 weeks, since we want to apply for a state loan. And those are very cumbersome. So 2 weeks is 2 weeks to keep the thing on track. So
and I was
short, we adjourned it. I think it was 11:30 last night, having done the police report and the water financing. The ground floor was continued for 2 weeks, and we'll see where we go with it.
Yeah, I missed the agenda amendments and watched the police and the PFAS and Jill and everybody thinking that eventually you were going to get to it, and finally you just adjourned. I said, wait a second, I just watched 4 hours of city council, so for an item that never got heard, but I figured I missed the agenda amendment. So
Right, well,
that's a good thing, by the way. The property owners are waking up.
Jack Balch at the beginning of the meeting then also tried to table that item for a year. Given the long list of things on the agenda, and I supported that, and obviously we were overruled.
I think there's some hope on it. My take on it, my hope on it is that folks need to understand what we're really discussing and parse it down to what they're actually, where this conversation started is not the overlay in total. And the overlay is it basically says, in addition to the downtown specific plan and other zoning and code requirements, if you're on first floor Main Street facing business, when you're not a business, if you're an owner, a landlord, the tenants that you put in there have to be what are called active use tenants unless you have an exemption. One of the exemptions that exists is the idea that in a single space, like in a single 1,500 square foot space, you might be able to rent to either one person who does two things or two different businesses that could share the space in a mixed single space where there's an active use facing the street and a non-active use behind it. For example, at 550 Main, you've got a home decor in the window, and behind it, which is related to home decor, selling homes, which is considered a non-active use, a real estate operation. This discussion ought to remain limited to that question. If we want to reopen all of the bickering and battling that went on over the overlay, we're in for a long, slow process that's going to end not in a decision, but in a lawsuits. And I just think that it's a very unproductive direction for us to go. What I am nominally, and PDA is nominally of the opinion that it would be better to leave the overlay alone entirely and to maintain the existing 25-75 split in single spaces. But it's not a naturally occurring business model. There was no such business prior to the existence of the overlay. It's not a relief valve that's going to solve. There aren't people waiting in the wings who are hoping to put a shoe repair shop in the front half of their accountancy firm. There's just not those kind of tenants that are out there waiting in the wings. And we are going to wind up fighting a big battle over an almost meaningless exception to the overlay. We need to keep the battle on that exception and not allow mission creep where they start wanting to dig in and tear apart the 6-month exception, which is very valuable to everybody. If their business has been vacant for 6 months, they can't. The other thing is in the staff report, Councilmember Merrim, there's some language that's incorrect. The staff report says that once the 6 months have elapsed, they can put in any use whatsoever, which is completely untrue. If there were no overlay, you couldn't put a pig farm where Christensen's was. You couldn't put a tattoo parlor or a marijuana dispensary or any use whatsoever. It's very heavily regulated even without the overlay. So the folks that are pushing tempo on wanting to tighten the overlay are asking the landlords to wake up, and they're poking the bear. And this is going to get really nasty if we don't keep this. Even if we get rid of the mixed use exception, it won't affect very many people as long as we grandfather the 2 instances where it's been used. And that will be a good experiment for us. A year from now, we may want to, if those 2 businesses work out well, we may say, gosh, we need to go back and reinstitute that exception. It's working great at 550 Main. So I really think that we need to limit the scope of this argument, make whatever changes you're going to make them minimal and move on, or else it's going to be a war over the overlay for no reason.
Thank you, Zach. Jill, you have your hand, and then Brad.
Yeah, Zach, I really appreciate what you said about, that the only activities, that really are something that you guys have looked at in the past that make money are things like a beer crawl and a wine walk. And I love those as much as anybody else. But in looking at our new census numbers, we have a significant portion of the population that for religious purposes don't drink. And we also have, active Tri-Valley Alcoholics Anonymous community in Pleasanton and that live a sober lifestyle. So I really appreciate you looking at some other activities that might include some of those folks in the downtown way of life. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it, and you've given me another idea, which I'll write down, which is if we could replace one of the big holiday crawls like St. Patrick's Day and Halloween and Christmas, those are likely to remain as festive activities. But if we could eliminate some of the superfluous beer crawls, and I'd like to replace one with from what you said, maybe with a health fair. We can sell booths for a health fair and make as much or more money as we can on some, and it's a good idea. Thank you.
Brad, go ahead. Thank you.
Zach, thanks for your fresh ideas. I think those are really good and beneficial for everybody. Incidentally, as a property owner, one of the things you learn pretty quickly is that roofs leak, and air conditionings go out on Friday afternoons.
Right,
So
right.
that's when it happens. The question I have is, in your ideas, I didn't hear you mention anything about advocating with the city for the city to make some capital improvements, particularly improve circulation so you can get vehicles in and out of downtown, and two, parking structure. Would you
That's
comment on
actually-
those, please?
Thank you, because that's actually was on my list, and it's the words that I couldn't read that I was mumbling about as I was going down my list was parking and wayfinding. One of the really important things, just to be very specific for a moment, when we do go back to a program of closing Main for weekends on Main, we need to look at the footprint of the closure and the time limits of the closure, and very importantly, we have kind of a Department of Transportation / institutional look and feel to the perimeter right now. There's signs that say detour and road closed and things like that. And those may be required by law, but right next to it, there ought to be a sign that says, welcome to weekends on Main. And instead of detour, the sign should say parking this way, that kind of thing. And so the wayfinding is almost as important as having more parking spaces, because it's really hard, even if you know your way around Pleasanton, to traverse Main when we close Main Street from the Livermore side to the Dublin side. You've got to know. If you don't know you're coming down Ray from the Livermore side and you run into a big sign that says road closed ahead, what it means is you can't turn right and go up Santa Rita ahead, but you can traverse Main there. And in fact, it's the only crossing that's open on that end of town, unless you're willing to go all the way around to Hop Yard on Del Val. So it's, and how you get from where you are to Del Val is a mystery to anyone who is not from here. So it's a really, really important question. It is high priority for us. I don't know about getting investments in infrastructure for something like a parking structure, a rerouting, or a bypass or something. Those are above my pay grade, but finding ways to make what we have work the best that it can work are certainly top priority for me.
Great, thanks, thanks, Brad. Any other questions from anyone? We've got quite a few engaged folks here with our community. Bill, do you have a question or comment?
Well, real excited to hear Zach and suggestions and ideas, and it's awesome to have somebody with that kind of representation for us. I am, as I look at all the pictures of all of our Zoom friends here, disappointed with lack of representation from really the actual shareholders. We seem to have these conversations all the time, kind of amongst ourselves, and many of us are not, either some of us are landowners, Brad, thank you, and others, but how do we get them more involved so that we really find out what their needs are, so we don't run into these problems down the road from both the building owners and the tenants or potential tenants?
Was that a question, Bill?
Yeah, the question is, how do we get more representation from how do we get them involved, and why aren't we seeing more voices from the people that are actually affected by the things that we're discussing?
One thing that we do have at PDA, which has been it's just a wisdom that was in place before I arrived, very helpful, is that our board is designed so that there are 2 spaces required, 2 positions for landlords, 2 positions for restaurant, 2 positions for retail, 2 positions for commercial, a city rep, and so on. By the time you add it up, there are 11, but they're kind of structured so that we do get that input. And currently we have Chris Baratlis and Brian Bowers on our board, and I've been fortunate to meet a number of the other owners. I don't by any means know even the majority of the owners, but we do get some input from them, and it leavens my understanding. I mean, when I arrived in town, there was a lot of momentum and spin on what was going on with PDA and their orientation toward the overlay debate. And as I parsed it out, I really think, and talked with the building owners that are on our board, we really weren't in disagreement over too much. It's just if we could deal with just that very narrow question of mixing 2 or 3 or more uses in one shared space. If your building is big enough, even if they eliminate the mixed use exception, you're going to be able to partition the space physically and you'll have a smaller space facing the street, and there's a lot of cost in that. Obviously, it's not a solution for everybody, but at least, there are ways of incorporating their points of view, and they do need to be heard from. I think that there's a lot more power. I guess I don't know what the right word is. I don't think that we want to awaken the ire of the building owners and property managers and the associated community over a marginal debate on how to tweak the overlay. I just am afraid that will set us on we'll miss out on all these other important things we've been talking about.
Okay, thanks, Zach. John has shown himself. John, did you have a comment or a question?
Sorry, yeah, lots of stuff going on this morning, like everybody else, I guess. But yeah, I wanted to say welcome to Pleasanton, Zach.
Thank you.
Can't believe it's been 100 days already. I saw your resume and I thought, wow, the PDA did a great job of attracting somebody with your qualifications. And this morning kind of substantiated that. I'm not sure how they did it, but I appreciate having you in the role that you're in. This morning has confirmed my expectations of the professionalism that you bring to the job. Based on Jill's comments and your response about a health fair, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. I volunteer at the local hospital, and I know that we would be interested in participating in that and potentially in a fairly significant way. So if you'd like to follow up, I'm sure you can get my contact information from Steve.
I would love that. And you touched on something that I didn't mention, but that's important to me personally, to try to bring my experience developing sponsorships of a more strategic level sponsorships for some of our local leading businesses. And there was beginning during COVID, just out of necessity, there was a program created called Downtown Champions. And what it really amounted to was asking companies that were able to just make a contribution. Essentially, it was represented as a sponsorship, but there were no deliverables. I think we've got a lot of value that we can uncover and deliver to sponsors without over commercializing downtown into being like a Las Vegas style carnival. But I could see, for example, a Stanford Health as a presenting sponsor of a health fair and getting some value there, or to be fair, Kaiser Permanente or someone else. I could see us doing a car show that's presented by the Hendrick Automotive Group, or I could see us and having those things, they come and they go. They're not necessarily permanent. We're not talking about a sign on the museum on Main that says "Welcome to the Chevrolet Museum on Main." But but my background in raising sponsorships and delivering value to sponsors, I think, could be useful. And those are areas where we could replace some of these other events and activities and get a much more stable. We would have survived COVID if we had a more diversified revenue base, is what I'm saying, I guess. And sponsorship's part of that. So thank you. I'd love to do a health fair.
Great. Steve's current board chair is COO from Stanford Healthcare Valley Care. So I know that she'd be interested in being involved as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Steve, I don't want to run over. We're at 8:05. I don't know if you have other agenda items or what we need to do.
No, we go to 8:30. We're still going to pepper you with questions. Yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to sweat.
Turn up your air conditioner. I just want to acknowledge Mr. Bing. It's so good to see you. I think it's been a while since you've joined us. Jeb, I hope you're doing well. And did you have any comments or questions? You have such a wealth of knowledge and experience here in Pleasanton. Just need to unmute yourself, Jeb. Jeb, we can't hear you. Yeah. Jeb, can you unmute yourself? There, I did it. There you go. Now we can hear you.
There we go.
Jeb, can you say that again? We missed that.
Okay, I think there's some down parts of downtown. Beans is closed and boarded up. Christensen's has flyers all over the windows, but just some cosmetic changes that need to be done to make it more inviting. Have you commented on that?
I appreciate that, and I agree. I actually had a nice walk all the way from the Pleasanton Hotel down to Vic's, if you know where that is, down near where Bob Herzog's real estate office is, down at Gay 90s area. went across the street and walked all the way back up to the Oasis in Pleasanton Hotel with Mayor Brown and Planning Commissioner Allen the other day. And it was just to hear what their thoughts were on everything going on downtown. And they had shared some ideas. They were interested in, and I didn't mention this, but our committees that existed at PDA before had activities like parking and beautification and design and economic vibrancy. Those committees are not operating right now because just administering them just would steal time that I don't have to do certain other things. But bringing back among the different committees, the first of the standing committees that I would like to bring back is our beautification committee. And so a lot of those items that we talked about on that walk with the Mayor and Commissioner Allen were a discussion with them of items that need to be enforced, some of them, and others that are sub-regulatory. And so the better that PDA can stand up and kind of self-regulate, get our beautification committee going and remind people when they've got a sign that's got letters missing, or they've got a this or that they don't really need to be written up as a code violation, but there are things that if we all kind of help each other out, we can make it better. And then there are other things that go beyond that. As you say, to get the dean's space ready for a tenant is going to be a big investment. That's not a beautification issue. That's something more. And I guess related, and a thought that I've had, and I don't quite know where to put it, other than visit with council about it and city staff, is if we're going to have, for example, a district, we have a business district. It's a defined actual entity, the downtown historic district. And then over and above that, on first floor main, we have a defined target there called the overlay. Why do we have the overlay? It's not just to irritate the landlords. It's because it's supposed to be a special place and we like special certain things to go on there. Well, at some point, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. If there are tenants that are looking for space in Pleasanton and there's plenty of parking next door to Safeway and the little space over there, why do they want to come downtown? We have to give rationale. We have to have some offsetting benefit. If we're going to hamper the landlords downtown as to who they can put in as tenants, those landlords need to have resources or have other support, whether it's matching funding or low interest loans to keep their places up, or to build these dividers that will cause the spaces facing the street to be small enough that I don't think I can't think of a retailer that would go into the Rick's Pick space, where Al Bronzini's building. It's 146 feet deep and 20 feet wide. He needs a low interest loan or a grant or something to build a partition about 50 feet back, and he'd have a nice 1,000 square foot store up there. But I'm rambling, but I'm trying to answer your question. I think there are things that we have to do to be creative, and it's really more on the city than on PDA, but we can certainly advocate for it. And then at the sub-regulatory level, we need to join together downtown and make sure that our flowers are not dead in the flower pot out front, and the signage our shops are neat and clean, and we have block captains who are, if we can do it without irritating each other, we can kind of challenge each other to keep downtown beautiful. I think that's important.
Thank you, Jeb. Great to see you. I'm going to ask a question that I think is sort of the elephant in the room. And Zach, you know this better than I now, that your budget is challenged, right? I mean, in order for you to pay your salary and your staff and get geared up like the PDA was before COVID, you have to do events to make that work. And there was talk about evaluating the assessment that is charged to downtown businesses, and obviously that was because of COVID. Where does that stand? Is that something that maybe can come back? Because I just think that you're going to be struggling with this. I mean, the PDA will forever until that's changed and updated.
It's an important issue, and it's one that I don't have my arms around yet. The bottom line that you'll hear the buzzwords are, we're currently a business improvement district. So we're a mandatory assessment district, and there's a surcharge. If your business license address is located within the 14 square block area that's marked out downtown as the district, you pay between $50 and as much as $350 in addition to your base. That hasn't been raised since 1989, by the way. So it's running a little bit behind. It used to pay for the whole organization, and now it's about 1/6 of our 2019 budget. So the solution that's been proposed and has been used in some other cities is called a P bid, and it's based on the volume of business that folks do in the entertainment area. I don't know for sure if that's the smartest and safest way to go forward. I honestly don't want to over rotate to where we're having the restaurants and the retailers pick up more of the burden because their transactions are not in the service area. So I'm not positive that I haven't thought it through. So I'm just really talking totally from off the cuff. I am not, my ego may be a little bigger than my abilities, which is, sometimes a good thing. You're not afraid of the dark, but I feel like we can get back on our feet if we do a couple of the right things without having to raise taxes, I guess is almost what I'm saying. That we can do that without having to change the bid structure. It's so small a part of our budget to begin with. It's 1/6 of our budget. That it's currently the entire budget. I shouldn't be saying that. In a normal year, it's 1/6 of our budget. And that, of course, means that we were back to relying on brew crawls and so on. And can the solution I'm talking about work? But I do think there are ways of raising the money to make this happen, even if the bid restructuring takes years from now. It's not going to happen quickly. It is something that needs to be addressed, but it's not going to happen quickly.
Thank you, Zach. I know that's a tough one, and it's been talked about for years, so hopefully we can get closer to that. Any other questions from anyone? I think Zach, it looks like he stopped sweating a little bit, so that's good. Any other comments?
I'd be interested to hear what Councilmember Narum thinks about the bid structure, because I am just walking into that conversation, and you know a lot more about it than I do. I mean, what do you think if you had to crystal ball? And I don't want to put you on the spot or create a Brown Act problem, but just what do you think?
Well, so when we did the priority setting, as I recall, and I can dig the documents out, that was put on the priority list, but it did not get 3 votes.
Yeah, correct.
So it was not carried forward for the 2-year work plan. I think and listening to you, I think what strikes me is there really needs to be a conversation about what the priorities for downtown are. I mean, it's no secret, I think I've been pretty vocal, that focusing on this overlay and trying to tweak something that was in effect for 6 months before COVID is not where our efforts ought to be, particularly given things going on that are peripheral to downtown, housing element, water, etc. Not to mention, we now have to hire a city manager, and I think there's questions around district elections that we're going to have to answer. So I think really what we really need to maybe back up and have a conversation about what are the priorities for downtown to keep it vibrant, to get that vitality. Clearly, Weekend on Main, which you touched on, the parklets, I think concerts in the park are all important. Your retail 21st century makes a lot of sense to me in this environment. And so part of that also needs to be the bid and what makes sense there. How are we going to finance the PDA? I think you're spot on with probably the 3, I'll call them alcoholic related events, but bringing in other ideas, including the health, including, art of some form there, whatever. I guess what I'm really saying is I really think, given, you're the new kid on the block with good perspective, lots of ideas, we almost really need to get focused on what makes sense here. Because I'm not sure we're focused necessarily on the right things. I think it's also important to note that I think it was 2 years ago, we had surplus and we set aside about $1 million for street improvements and things to the downtown. And we did use some of that money, I think, to fund the weekends on Main. It cost about $7,500 every weekend to set it up and take it down. But there's still a decent amount of money there that, you know, we need to, what makes sense for that? You know, we have reserves. We don't need to be sitting on the money necessarily if there's good things that get done and enhance the downtown. So that's not really an answer to your question. I'm more, I think we got to back up here and really figure out where the emphasis, not trying to do anything all of us. And the bid should be part of that.
Thank you. I just my gut feeling based on meeting folks and so on and where we all stand, what everyone's been through for the past 2 years is I don't want the way that we dig ourselves out of this hole to be to just charge our members some assessment, some more money. I just feel like that would, I would be a short-lived administrator here if that were what I was trying to do. And I also think it's the wrong thing to do right now. We kind of got, you know, sometimes you get what you need, not what you want. And we would want to have in 2019, I'm sure everyone close to PDA would want to have converted to a P-bid, and that would have been, and if there had been no COVID, that might be a great solution. But right now, converting and asking people who've been struggling to pay 5 or 6 times the surcharge they do now to cover the entire cost of PDA, I think is and probably in a form where it's passed through as a surcharge on people's dining tab. You know, I'm already paying 10.5% sales tax and too much for the meal to begin with, and my waiter was bad, and oh, PDA gets 1.5 points, you know, or whatever. It just, I don't think that's where I want to go.
Great. Well, great discussion. Jeb, you have your hand up and you're unmuted, so go for it.
Well, I just wanted to build on what Joe had to say about alcohol. It seems like the three priorities you've got, Zach, are alcohol related on Main Street, and that people who don't drink, and there are a few of us,
Sure.
aren't inclined to come downtown because there's nothing else to offer besides wine and beer. Maybe you could add something to that besides lemonade, but some reason to come downtown on those events besides the alcohol.
Well, that's what I think. I'm trying to think through how to build a companion event to the farmers market. The farmers market is one of the great longstanding events. We are actually the rights holder of the farmers market, the PDA. We have a concessionaire who does that for us. Our concessionaire contract includes no royalties, believe it or not. So that's another challenge I have, is to figure out if someone's going to come to our town and put on a nice show like that, how can I unwind a 30-year agreement and figure out how to participate in the upside of it without destroying the wonderful creature that's there. So I probably need to get Pete McDonald and some others who know about long-standing histories of what's been going on in those relationships and figure out how to visit with our concessionaire about including us, or tacking a few extra booths on ourselves to the edge of the farmers market and selling some non-competitive categories like automotive and home builder and solar. And we do sell a few of those, but we could probably add 8 or 10 booths to the edge of the farmers market and make our own money. But getting back to your question, those kind of activities like farmers market, like a maker's market, health fair, other activities, to an extent, music other than the concerts, things people can come down and enjoy. I think a lot of programs we could collaborate with the museum on Main. One of my favorite, this is how nerdy I am, one of my favorite things about Pleasanton is the speaker series at the museum on Main. I listen to those every time. And that, like a Chautauqua series downtown, would be kind of a, these are a Lincoln Douglas debates. Or whatever. So all kinds of interesting things we could do that have nothing to do with a street stroll. So I'm totally with you on that. We can't wean ourselves off of it totally, and it is still part of still part of culture. We're going to have St. Patty's is going to happen whether you're Irish or not. So,
Great.
Thanks. John, did you have a question or comment? I saw you put your hand up. No?
Well, I just a suggestion, since you called on me. Zach, if you're not familiar with the Quest Science Center in Livermore, they are a fairly young organization, a couple years old, I guess, that have received some pretty significant funding. They're going to have a physical presence, but they're really a Tri-Valley entity, and they do a lot of things around science and youth. And with Lawrence, Livermore, and Sandia, such huge employers in the Tri-Valley, I'm sure that they'd be interested in doing something at least annually, maybe more often on Main Street. We used to have astronauts and scientists come and speak at the Amador Theater on the Amador Valley campus. That theater's in a state of repair or recovery right now, I think. But having them involved in some way downtown would be a youth-oriented event, and the science-based stuff always goes over really well. So anyway, Quest in Livermore, if you haven't talked to them, that might be worth a conversation at some point.
absolutely. There at one of the economic vitality meetings, Steve, that we were at a couple versions ago, they talked about the incubators that are going on around for biomedical and so on. And I don't know if there's some either incubator or related kind of companion type activity that could go on downtown, but a WeWork space, or I don't know what it would be, but something like that might be interesting, especially in a big empty space like Christensen's. I don't see a retailer coming in there and gobbling that up.
Good. Any other comments from anyone that I'll call on you if you put your hand up and you don't want to be called on, so be careful. Okay. All right. Any other council member Balch? I see you lurking there. Any comments, or I'm glad you're awake this morning. Thank you for joining us.
I'll go with I'm glad I'm awake. I don't have any additional comments. I'm definitely listening to the ideas, and I think we all understand the challenges. One comment I'll make is that I still believe there's a synthetic vacancy or occupancy because of the eviction moratorium throughout the state. And I think it's any action the council takes needs to be done with great caution, because while we have 9 vacancies based on the report from staff, we don't know the number of paying tenants, and that allocation, who's paying or what movement we may have in our downtown businesses or even throughout our city is something weighing on me as we get closer to September 30th. So I think we are not resolved with the pandemic. Employment benefits are ending, as we know, unemployment benefits. And so there's just great change immediately on the precipice above us or here. And yeah, given I'm pretty.
Oh, you muted it.
You got muted again.
Got muted, Jack. There you are. You're back.
No problem. Yeah, I just think there's great change ahead or very close to us, and we've just got to be careful.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Questions? Thank you, Zach, so much. I really appreciate you being here. It's been great working with you, and I look forward to continuing our partnership, our strong partnership. I just want to let everybody know tonight we're having our outdoor mixer at Omron starting at 5 o'clock. So I hope you can join us. It should be a wonderful event. There'll be, I think, robots roaming around serving drinks, maybe, just, possibly. And we also have on Thursday afternoon, starting at 4 o'clock, we're co-hosting a Tri-Valley Job Fair with the Tri-Valley Career Center that recently moved to Hacienda Business Park, right in the same building as John Muir Healthcare. So we've got 50 businesses signed up and over 150 job seekers that are hopefully going to come. So that should be a fun event as well. And then on Friday, Zach, we're doing the ribbon cutting for Zachary. So that's
There we go.
at 3 o'clock. So that'll be exciting as well. So busy week. And I want to thank you all for your engagement this morning. And
Steve?
Lori's, yes, Zach, go ahead.
Just one last thing, and I'm remiss not to have done this sooner, but I want to let everybody on the call know that I've been welcomed to the town so graciously by so many people, but nobody more so than Steve. And having the chamber right around the corner from our office and having Steve's ear and voice available for a lunch or coffee or any time has been extremely motivating. And I think that just the class that Steve brings to running meetings, especially these Zoom meetings that are a little bit cumbersome, I've really enjoyed. Steve and I, by coincidence, have mutual friends from 30 years ago when we both worked over on the other side of the hill. And just getting to know Steve and enjoy his friendship and partnership has been super motivating. And I thank you for having me, Steve.
You're welcome, Zach, and I'll pay you later for those compliments. Appreciate them very much.
No problem.
I think that's it, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to announce or bring to front. But thank you all for coming, and stay cool today. We hope to see you tonight at our mixer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.